These Space Marines are mighty heroes whose legends have become part of the chapter's history, and it is every Black Templar's ambition to become one of its elite. Clad in the finest suits of armor and bedecked with Crusader seals, they are the very image of a Baroque warrior knight. That's right, you guessed it, we're talking about Sword Brethren on today's video. Welcome, everyone. We are at last talking about our newest unit, Primaris Sword Brethren. They are back, and they are great in our opinion. That paragraph, just a anecdote there for you. That paragraph is actually what made me decide to play Black Templars. I was searching around for what army to play, and I was thumbing through the book, and I read that paragraph. I put the book down and went and purchased it, and the rest is history, as they say. So, um, let's get right into it. Sword Brethren are a pretty awesome unit. They have quite a few different options for us in the new book. Um, and so let's go over quickly what they are and what they can take. As you can see here, they do have the Primaris stat line. They do have 3 attacks because they are veterans, which is great. Um, so otherwise, standard Space Marine Primaris, stat line. They are armed with chain swords and heavy bolt pistols. Any model can take a power sword, so you can have all power swords or any mix of chain swords and power swords. You can have, if the squad has 9 or fewer models, you can have 1 Thunderhammer, 1 pair of 2 Lightning Claws, 1 Power Axe, 1 Power Maul, and then 1 each of a Plasma Pistol or a Pyre Pistol. If you have 10 guys, that number doubles to be able to take 2 of each. So that's kind of their stat line. Now, as far as how are we going to arm these guys, we're going to leave those pistols at home unless you just, as we said in previous videos, unless you just don't have any points, anywhere to spend those few points left over, which with the new points increases, we probably don't have leftover points. You're going to leave those at home. They're just not worth it. Now, we do recommend taking as many Thunderhammers and Lightning Claws as you can because both are excellent weapons. They get the Vanguard Veteran pricing, so 12 points for a Thunderhammer, 3 points per Lightning Claw, so 6. The Power Swords are all Vanguard Veteran pricing as well, 3 points apiece, which brings a Power Sword Brethren to a nice 25 points per model, which for a guy with 3 attacks, and they have a unique strat for exploding 6s to hit, is pretty awesome. So they also have 2 other weapons that you can take, Power Axe and a Power Maul. Unfortunately, Power Mauls are just absolutely terrible right now. Power Axes are not much better. There is very, very few cases, basically orcs, where they're gonna outdo a power sword, and you can only take one of them anyway. So it's really kind of pointless. Something to note for them as far as their loadout, they are all Sword Brethren. So things that trigger off of Sword Brethren or Sergeant keyword, not keyword, but things like taking a relic like revered repositories or champion of the feast. Each one of them can take that. So you could use revered repository and champion of the feast on 2 different models in this squad. That's something that's unique to them. No one else can do that because no one else has more than 1 sword brethren in the squad. So that's a bit about the squads and what you can arm them with, and what we think that you should arm them with. A lot of folks have been comparing them to, so what should I take, Bladeguard or Sword Brethren, and comparing the two. And Bob and I think that's a bad idea. We shouldn't compare those two. They don't serve the same role. But since everyone is doing it, we decided to go ahead and compare some numbers for you to see how exactly they stack up. Now, obviously, Bladeguard are going to be more durable. They do have a Storm Shield. So even with Uphold, you're looking at a 2+, 4+ save versus a 3+, 5+ save. And Bladeguard have an extra wound. They are definitely tankier. There is no questioning that. But when we look at the numbers here, I did a bunch of math here. I included Sword Brethren's special strat that's unique to them. I didn't include any other buffs because both units have access to all the other same buffs that we have. But you can see here that while the Bladeguard do better against things like Marines, vehicles to a certain extent, things that are tough 5 and up with a 3+ save, that the Sword Brethren catch up a little bit, especially against things that have one wound like orcs and most models with toughness 3, and then dreads and the new Crusher Stampede, which are all -1 damage, which kind of nerfs the Blade Guard's damage output. So the Sword Brethren catch up there. They do a little bit better with their exploding 6s. Now, something to keep in mind is I did 5 of each here. So there is a points disparity of like 38 points. The Sword Brethren are cheaper. So I mathed out per 100 points. And you can see at per 100 points, it's actually a much different story, especially when you use that 1 CP strat to make exploding 6s. The Sword Brethren's damage output with a Thunder Hammer and those Lightning Claw attacks is really better in virtually every scenario, especially with those exploding 6s. So now that we've kind of taken a little look at the math there, Bob, what do you think? I know a lot of folks have been comparing these. What if they don't serve the same role? What role do Sword Brethren serve?
All right, so that's a good question. This is something that's kind of been talked about for several months now. Many questions you see on Facebook, you see it on Discords, you see it pretty much everywhere. Reddit, asking what's the difference? Why would you just not take Blade Guard?
Yep.
So I'll start with the Blade Guard, and Alex touched on it. They are more durable. They're meant to be taken as uh, go right up their center of the board. You got your path carry, and you have maybe your icon or your crux, and they just tank shots, revive, make your opponent come to you, hopefully hold the center, maybe be a little bit aggressive on a counter attack. That's what they do. They survive, they soak things, and they killed Marines. That's what they were really good at.
Yep.
That's their role. They're very durable at it, but the Sword Brethren don't do the same things. And what is really kind of important in today's meta, especially after the points increases and some of the new codexes that are going to be coming out and have come out, the Crusher Stampede is a huge one.
Yep.
We have to transition what we're thinking about when we're building our list. So when you have a Bladeguard veteran, which is traditionally a unit, even a month ago, I would say, okay, take the Bladeguard over the Sword Brethren, right? Now I wouldn't. Why? Because you're going to be facing a lot more -1 damage on tough things than we did before. You need a source of higher damage or more attacks to push through damage on these things. And you get that in a lot more attacks with your Lightning Claw. You have higher damage in your Thunder Hammer,
Yep.
and you have potentially a lot of procced 6s on your, all of your weapons ultimately, but, your power swords um, when you're doing that. Now, you could take chainswords and make like a cheap unit to do that, but, and even the one thing that didn't really get mentioned is we did the math on the 5 guys, but you can take them in a 10-man squad,
Yep.
and they can be your rock unit that you go and use them in this role is go and take things from your opponent, move on,
Yeah.
have the rest of your list follow up and hold.
Yeah.
What's saying that you don't storm through the middle of the board, and you have maybe an infiltrator squad or maybe assault intercessors or something take that center, because you have a giant unit that is super nasty, will kill pretty much anything that it hits
Yep.
on the charge, coming right at them. Meanwhile, you also have maybe Terminators or Vanguard veterans off on the flank that, maybe Psalm is on those. Now, you could do a differing, you could buff them up, get an Apothecary in there. Maybe you got um, yeah, the Relic to give your 4+, the Shroud. Sorry, forgot, blank there. But the role is different. So as I mentioned right there, the Bladeguard are kind of a counter offensive unit. They hold the center, kind of jump out when they need, and are kind of cagey, right? You have to put a bunch of firepower into them to get rid of them. They're annoying. The Bladeguard veteran or the Sword Brethren are easier to kill, obviously, as mentioned before, because of the saves and no storm shield and one less wound. But you can take more bodies
Yep.
per point. They do more damage, and you theoretically can still transhuman them, and they can take cover if you're in uphold to give them that additional durability. And you have the bodies to get across the board to threaten your opponent. Whereas the Blade Guard, you really kind of want to hold them, and you want to try and entice your opponent to shoot at them to make them more valuable. Plus, they do damage against Crusher Stampede. They can take down monsters. They can the Kyrion. They can kill that. They can take on Thick City. Some of those things is going to be really important. Now, the other thing is to note on that is a lot of the things you're going to be thinking about. Oh, Tau, right? There is some kind of scary things coming from Tau, and soon the Elder Eye. You have your durable Blade Guard veterans with your Storm Shield. Yes, no one's going to hurt me in the center of the board. Oh, your Storm Shield. Oh, I ignore all your invulnerable saves. See you later.
Yep.
Goodbye. Damage 4 weapons goes through, get rerolls, hits on a 2+. That unit's going to die. Now, if they shoot that same weapon at your Sword Brethren, yeah, some are going to die, but you're still going to have a fully functional unit left
Yeah.
that can potentially charge into your opponent's list. Now, so I'm not saying the Blade Guard are bad. Far from that. They're an amazing unit. They didn't take any points hikes, which was something that I thought was going to happen in
Yeah.
CA 22, but they didn't. So it's a positive thing, but they fulfill a totally different role. So if you need something to be very aggressive, to get across the board and to kill something of your opponents while also still having some range attacks with pistols, which something like your assault terminators do not have, they're a unit at least consider. Now, that's just something to kind of think about with their, but like I mentioned, they can also take things like cover. They gain the benefit of
Yep.
cover, so they can still get that 2+ save. And on a lot of those scary weapons from Tau and such, they're going to be AP2. So maybe you do put something like Icon on them, maybe if you have an Apothecary close by, and you're going to ignore all those anyways, and you're still taking your 2+, or even maybe 3+. And if you don't, with that AP-2, guess what? You're still taking the 5+, even if they ignore your invulnerable, right? From
Yeah,
Uphold.
exactly. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the power of ignoring passions. Um, you know, Blade Guard with when we're taking uphold, they get the mini transhuman, but they're not being able to take advantage of the -1 from dense cover or the
Yep.
+1 to their armor save, whereas Sword Brethren can. And that also makes Sword Brethren a good target for a Val like Fervent Acclamation because you don't have to worry about something like if you want to take Suffer Not where, oh, I have to charge the nearest unengaged unit. They simply don't care. So you can get those auto wounds in there. So now if you use your strat, you're hitting on a 6, gives you an extra hit and an auto wound, which is pretty awesome. So I agree. I think their role is to go out and kill something, to be aggressive, and you know, go and strike first. Essentially, Blade Guard are much more of a I'm going to plunk my 3 to 5 man unit on this objective and dare you to try to take it from me because you're going to have a hard time shooting me off of it, and they're dangerous enough in melee that only a real dedicated melee unit is going to be able to shift them and survive. Sword Brethren don't have that durability, but they don't need it because they have more numbers. You can take them. The points work out if you're taking 2 Thunderhammers, all power swords, and 2 Lightning Claws. Then the points work out to uh, 10 Sword Brethren with that loadout is the same as 8 Bladeguard or 2 4-man squads of Bladeguard,
Yep.
right? So you got 2 extra bodies. That's yes, they have 1 less wound, but when you take something that's 3 or more wound or 3 or more damage, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing, right? You're gonna still lose a body if you fail your invulnerable save. And you can transhuman them if need be. That combined with being able to benefit from cover, because we're probably running uphold with these guys to give them that invul, is pretty awesome. It also they are a great target for the Aurelian Shroud, which while it was nerfed to be only infantry, um, which is fine because honestly, our Redemptors don't really need it anymore. Between Grimaldus giving them a Feel No Pain and Uphold giving them a 5+, our Redemptors don't really need it anymore, honestly. Um, but these guys getting a crucial turn where maybe they're out there in the open, and next turn they're going to smash into the enemy's line and they need that 4+, they're going to get it. And the timing on the Aurelian Shroud has changed, which is excellent. It is, if you just to refresh your memory, it is no longer at the start of the battle round that you decide it. It's at the start of either person's command phase. So you can go through your turn and be like, if you go first and be like, you know what, I don't know what's gonna happen here, and then depending on how you move and sort of what happens, and maybe you didn't damage that one unit as well as you'd hoped, I need to go ahead and use it,
Yeah.
on my opponent's turn, type of thing. So really good flexibility with using that, and I think they're a great target for a relic like that. Um, so um, so yeah, I think they, especially in a big 10-man squad, they have some really good flexibility too. Maybe you decide at the start of the game, hey, I think I'd be better off taking 2 5-mans. You can then combat squad them, and because they're all essentially sergeants, there's no like one guy has a little bit more attacks than the other squad. You can kind of break them up however you want. If you want to have them just be even, as if you bought 2 5-man squads, you can do that. You can make one that's just all power swords, a cheaper unit to maybe hold counterattack a deep striking unit in your backfield or something, and then have like all the Thunderhammers and stuff like that in the other squad. So there's a
Yep.
multitude of ways that you can use them, and because they have things like Lightning Claws and Thunderhammers, they can face multiple threats and they can target multiple threats. Whereas Blade Guard go into a Dreadnought or a Crusher Stampede, and they're going to kind of flounder because they don't have they're paying for a weapon that isn't benefiting them anymore.
Yep.
They're only getting 1 damage from it, and Sword Brethren are 10 points per model cheaper with a power sword, and doing the same damage to Crusher Stampede and anything with -1 damage, um, as the Blade Guard. So I think that's something that needs to be considered when you're looking at, you know, which unit should I take, which honestly, you shouldn't be looking at it that way. You should be looking at, what do I need in my list? Do I need an anchor to hold objectives in the midfield, or do I need a unit to go kill stuff? And Sword Brethren aren't the only unit that can do it, but they
Yeah.
do it better than Blade Guard.
Yep. And one
So
of the things that, I didn't really touch on with that is, they are one of the units, especially if you take them in 10 man, they're highly, highly receptive to buffs. So if you have
mhm,
a chaplain with them, you can, whether it be Litany of Divine Protection, maybe Psalm, or even Fires of Devotion. Fires of Devotion is an excellent choice for a unit that's following them around because of the Thunderhammers. The math actually works out better for the Thunderhammers when they get into actual attacks.
well, and they're
Um,
getting the exploding sixes with that too.
yep, it
So
that touches on what I was going to say is you don't even necessarily have to have fervent acclamation. You have gene rot might in there too that
yeah,
you can use.
yeah, that's right. We always forget.
So
Everyone always forget about that strat, but it's
and
also a
that
really good
works
strat.
against vehicles.
Yes, it
So
does. Yes, it
so that's
does.
something to think about as well.
Yep.
So highly, highly effective surgical strike potential with the Sword Brethren.
Yeah.
Now, will your opponent let them get across the board? Maybe not, but at least you're spending less for the Sword Brethren than you are on the Bladeguard Veteran.
Yep.
So it's
Now,
something to consider.
I think they really kind of fill a Primaris version role of what Vanguard vets do. Um, they trade what they trade. Obviously, Vanguard vets have speed and storm
Mhm.
shields, but Sword Brethren have more attacks and they're Primaris.
Yep.
So they are probably going to be. I haven't done the math on that, but probably if you transhuman them versus a Vanguard vet storm shield, it's probably going to be pretty close durability wise, but they're going to hit way harder than Vanguard vets because they have an extra attack each baseline. So, and they get the exploding sixes.
Yep.
So, it's a trade off, but they're also a lot cheaper. If you're running 10-man Vanguard vets with all lightning claws and all storm shields, it's a 300 plus point unit. The same 10 guys, Sword Brethren, with 2 Thunderhammers, 2 Lightning Claws, and 6 Power Swords, 274 points.
Yep.
That's pretty cheap given their damage output. So yeah. So Bob, tell us a little bit about how would you fit them into a list. Obviously, they're going to be one of your big damage dealing pieces. They're going to take up a chunk of your list. What kind of things would you build that list around with those Sword Brethren?
Well, right now, on my Discord, I kind of brought to the community to really talk about the meta and what roles I kind of wanted everything in my personal list to kind of fulfill. And I recognize that Bladeguard may not be their answer going forward into this meta. Maybe it may shift back later on. So I was looking at different units, and Alex suggested taking a look again at Sword Brethren. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of turned the page on them a little bit. I was looking at maybe Centurions or Terminators or something to that effect, but I wanted something that could do some damage. And when I nailed down, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be open minded about it. I didn't think they were terrible. I don't think they're bad or anything of that nature when the Codex came out. I just thought that they filled a different role, but the Bladeguard veterans in general worked better for what I needed. Um, but I sat down, I took the 10-man unit, and I started building around it with some Vanguard veterans, and I talked about, and I still, even with the point increases on the Redemptors, I'm still gonna probably rock two to three of them because they're too
They're
good.
so good.
They're too
Yeah.
good. So that's a good solid core. Now, I typically will take a battalion. So I like infiltrators. So infiltrators is one of my go-to units, so they can deploy forward if I need to get an early objective or maybe a quarter if I'm going that route to get that right away. But I also take a troop squad. So maybe it's a Crusader squad, depending if I need some points. But typically, it's going to be either an Assault Intercessor or regular Intercessor squad. They'll follow up behind my damaging units that can basically take whatever objectives that the Sword Brethren or the Vanguard killed off of. And my goal then after that is to protect my 2 to 3 objectives and not let my opponent get to them by being aggressive with at least 2 close combat units. So I typically will build 2 to 3 close combat oriented squads in my list, and that's kind of how I build my lists. Now, some people swear by the two. I try to err towards the three if I can, but in this, if you're going with 10 man Sword Brethren, I think two is sufficient because you got a lot of bodies if you combo them with the Vanguard veterans. So then, obviously, you're going to need buffers for them. So you don't want to have this unit going across the board without buffs. So you're going to want a chaplain. Typically, you're going to, if you're taking Vanguard veterans, you're going to have a biker chaplain or maybe even jump pack chaplain, which might be in consideration now that the biker chaplain got uh, nerfed a little bit. But it depends on your list. You know, T Bones is still really, really, really good. So it's kind of a strategic based on your list. But you got Grimaldus. You know, you can stretch
Grimaldus is
Grimaldus
good with
out
them.
amazing
Yeah.
lengths with that. So you could theoretically stick one of his servitors right in the center of your three redemptors, give them all the 5+ and stretch them out. They're all walking towards the center in the length of a Congo chain and giving all those buffs out. So, and meanwhile, you know, maybe you need to advance a little bit further out, those Sword Brethren, litanies, then you got your stratagems. Doing it this way, you're running between 9 and 10 CP to start the game, which is going to be really important with a lot of the changes into the new battles where they're we know of at least one where there's some CP changes potentially. I
Yep.
haven't seen the full book for the different missions. I would suspect there's probably another one in there somewhere. Uh, Maybe some other ones can tell me if they've watched all the previews on all the videos. I haven't. But that's kind of where I would start. Probably try and fit in some Melta in there as well. So then you have two really dangerous units for close combat that are going to be very aggressive. One's going to be faster than the other one, but one is taking that center, daring you to come at them because who's going to charge a big old block of Sword Brethren? Really? Not from anything. Maybe
Not many
Crusher.
people.
Crusher. You're going to see those Hive Tyrants coming right at him, or Swarm Lord. But honestly, are they going to be able to kill all of your dudes in that unit? Probably not.
No, probably not.
Maybe with some lucky rolls with the mortal wound for the Crusher Stampede, you might be able to take the 3 or 4 of them out and then kill with the rest. But they got to be lucky, and if you let them charge you doing that, that's your fault anyway. Um, so, you can play around with a little bit of those things and get a pretty good list. And if you need to, if you're facing something that has a ton of units, maybe like Drakari who aren't playing Thick City and they have a ton of units, you could combat squad them, right?
Yep.
You're not as concerned about taking that big old 10-man unit for durability. So then you
Right.
can have more units. You can split your vanguard. So you have all of a sudden maybe 12, 13 units to start. Now you have 15.
Yep.
So you have some things to play around with, and then obviously you have Helbricht that you could take on that if you take in the 3 HQs. But the kind of thing is, going forward, you need bodies. You really need bodies. So there's kind of two main thoughts on that: is you can go with the Crusader squads, or you can go with bodies in your elites. And I still am kind of leaning towards the bodies in the elites. So not that I don't like Crusader squads. I think they're really good. It's just a different style of build. I'm a little bit concerned about their damage output against certain lists. Um, so that's why I kind of like the elites. But it's obviously working for some people because they're winning lists.
They're winning tournaments. Yeah,
So
exactly. And that's something that I like that we're seeing multiple different kinds of lists winning tournaments. Yeah, I think something else to talk about with them is combos. So Sword Brethren, I mentioned this earlier in the video, have some pretty neat things that you can do. They are all Sword Brethren, like I mentioned. So if you wanted to, you could take revered repositories and give a guy a sword of judgment. If you wanted to, as one of our Discord members, Casey says, if you want to go full Gucci with him, you can. And take something like Sword of Judgment on a guy with a power sword with revered repositories. Make somebody a feast champion, which in this squad, normally, if you're going to like stack buffs, normally I'd probably go and put it on one guy, but in this case, I think I would probably put the Feast Champ on one of the Thunderhammers to get them to hit on threes instead of fours, which is a huge damage increase for a Thunderhammer. And then they get an extra attack, which is also, as you mentioned, with like fires, a pretty huge damage increase. Um, and then if you really want to keep going and stacking on the stuff, you could give Bones of Mordred, one of the relic bearers, to one of the Lightning Claw guys, and now he's dealing mortal wounds on sixes. And the dual Lightning Claw Sword Brethren have 6 attacks on the charge, which is character territory. So, you can, if you get rerolls to hit, exploding sixes stacked on there, you could end up dealing, several. If with a lucky roll, you could probably end up dealing, 3 or 4 mortal wounds, which would be kind of crazy. Um, so, um, so yeah, so they have a ton of those type of things.
Yep.
Something else to consider: they are on 40 millimeter bases. This is both good and bad. It's good because they can take up a pretty good swath of territory and deny area denial, right? You can keep opponents from deep striking into a critical part of the board with them. You can um, screen well with them. Um, you know, and it the downside, though, of course, is that cramming them all in to get all 10 guys into a combat, depending on what you're fighting, could be difficult. It can be done, but it could be difficult. uh, you know the fortunate thing is that you almost certainly be able to get 5 guys in, right? The other 5 can pile in right behind them, and as long as
Yeah.
they're within a half an inch of a half an inch, they're all fighting. And that's a huge number of attacks on the charge. That's
Yep.
30 attacks, right? So 40 attacks, which is insane. So, yeah, so that's sort of what we feel about Sword Brethren. Any final thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, so it's kind of a reminder and kind of reiterating what I said a little bit in summary is Bladeguard and Sword Brethren fulfill 2 different roles. Counter assault, holding the center of the board, or objectives is the Bladeguard veterans. They're durable. They can you want them to be shot, they want them to be charged. That's their role. You revive them, laugh in your opponent's face as they survive. The Sword Brethren are very aggressive unit. They go and take. They force the issue with your opponent. They kill stuff. That's what they're there for. You read the lore of Sword Brethren, and there's some White Dwarf lore that's been coming out in Octarius books. There's some great lore, some with the Sword Brethren. They're attacking. They're very attack oriented.
Yeah,
It fits their theme, right? Going into the meta the way it is right now, we really kind of need to up the damage of our close combat. I really feel that we might need to look at the Bladeguard veterans in our list.
Sword Brethren.
Or the well, I'm talking about the Bladeguard veterans in our list not being there
Oh,
anymore
not taking
versus,
them. Yeah, yeah,
yep, not taking them and looking at other alternative units like the Sword Brethren.
yeah. I think this unit is very slept on, and I think a lot of people are just instantly discrediting it as, oh, well, they're not as good as Blade Guard. And I think the numbers show that they point for point are as deadly, and in the case of using their strat, more deadly than Blade Guard. But again, they don't serve the same role. So let's stop comparing Blade Guard and Sword Brethren, and instead find a use for both in our list. Maybe in the same list, So that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let us know down in the comments how you have been using. Have you been using Sword Brethren? How have they done in your games? Let us know what you think. Also, come check out our Patreon. We have a really a great group of folks. We couldn't do this without you guys, so we really appreciate all of the things that you do for us. And if you're interested in joining our Patreon, you get a bunch of extra benefits like special roles in our Discord channel, early access to videos, that sort of thing. We do have a really active Discord community, so I encourage you to come and check it out. We've got all kinds of different channels for you to discuss all of your Black Templar hobbies. So until next time, keep on crusading.